Huzzah!
Hello.
Thanks, Daddy.
Hey!
Well, happy Father's Day, First Church. It's really good to be with you. And again, dads, we love you, and we're so grateful for you. I'm grateful for my father, who I believe is here at this service. And thanks for doing such a good job on me. You really nailed it. So, Man, it was an eventful week for us. I don't know about you, but my wife and I really did have one of the busiest weeks we've had in a long time. Every night we had a church event. Every morning something was going on. It was just very, very busy. And amidst the busyness, something happened this week that I feel as a pastor compelled to talk about. I don't do this very often. And again, I don't really talk about my personal political affiliation a whole lot on the stage. But I do feel like something happened that was so significant this week. I do need just to mention it. And our church has always been a place where no one is perfect and everyone is welcome. That's what we say. And we don't say that because that's our thing. We say that because that's what Jesus taught. Jesus easily could have set up a political kingdom if he wanted to. He definitely had enough influence and clout to begin a political revolution, a political resistance against the Roman Empire and against the Greco-Judeo world that he lived in. But he did not do that. Instead, he began a spiritual revolution. And he always said, no one is perfect, everyone is welcome no matter what you believe in. You see, Jesus believed in this thought of the freedom of religion. He said, I'm not going to force you to follow me. I want you to follow me, right? And there's a big difference between those two things. I love that invitational freedom that Jesus gives us. Now, this election cycle that we were most recently in was very just gross. I had a hard time enduring it. It was like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. I can't wait till it's over. And then I got over, and it's like, this doesn't feel like it's over. It feels like we're still in it. Like every single time I turn on the news or anything or flip through my phone, it's like, wow, the most shocking thing you've ever heard. So much so, so extreme that I feel like we've been desensitized to things that are truly extraordinary. This week, something that happened that I think was truly tragic and extraordinary. I want to make it clear before I go into this that I have a deep respect for many of our politicians. There's a man named Bernie Sanders. I respect his character. I think he stands by what he believes in. But this week something happened that, again, I feel like I need to talk about. During a congressional hearing, there was a man named Russell Vought who was under examination to become a part of the Congressional Budget Office. Russell Vought is a graduate of my alma mater, Wheaton College. I have a deep respect for him and his beliefs. He is a very orthodox Christian man. Orthodox just means he holds the same beliefs we've always held for 2,000 years. And during the examination, Bernie Sanders made it clear that anyone who holds on to Orthodox Christian beliefs, Muslim beliefs, even Orthodox Jewish beliefs or Buddhist beliefs is unfit to serve in public office. And that's kind of a big deal. He voted against Russell Vought because of that. And this to me is a classic case of I'm tolerant as long as you agree with me. And that's not tolerance at all. That's not tolerance at all. Essentially what he was saying was the only people who are fit to participate in society are people who are just like me. And that to me is a dangerous statement. Jesus was never this way. Christianity has always been no one's perfect and everyone's welcome, no matter what your belief is, no matter what your orientation is, you're welcome to come and hear the message of Jesus. That's what we want. Everybody is welcome to participate. And not only as a Christian, but as an American, I stand for a society where people are welcome from all backgrounds to participate with a complete freedom of religion, a freedom to seek and find the truth in their own way. And I just want you to hear today no matter what your religious affiliation is, whether you have a religion or not, if you believe in the freedom to seek and find the truth as an American citizen, I want you to know that that is under attack today. And I just want to challenge you to stand up for love in a respectful, tolerant way. And I want you to know, I think we live in a world that is increasingly extreme. I think it's hard to have respectful dialogue. And my goal when I talk with people is not to provoke, my goal is to persuade. And there's a big difference between those two things. I think that's what we're called to do respectfully. I made on my personal Facebook page a post talking about exactly what I've just shared with you. And my goal was to have a conversation with people who have different opinions than I do. And I did. I was able to have a great conversation with some people. I connected with an old classmate from my high school, and we had a really good conversation. But I also had people say some extremely, just crazy things, like violent things. And I deleted their posts. It was shocking. And, it really wasn't that shocking because I think the art of compromise, tolerance, and conversation in our society is being lost in an increasingly extreme world. And I think people from both ends of the political spectrum are becoming increasingly extreme. And real tolerance, that is not ranting on people who disagree with you, that is the idea of actually conversing with people who disagree with you, that art is being lost. And I think it's a sad thing. I think it's a bad thing for our society. I think we need the ability to respect and dignify human beings who disagree with us. I think that's a really, really good thing. And I want to challenge us as Christians to stand in love, respect, and tolerance, okay? That doesn't mean posting like, crazy things from sources that probably aren't that verified. That means, having a respectful, dignified, persuasive conversation with people who disagree with us. And I just want to challenge us to stand in love, respect, and tolerance of all human life. I think this extremity is a great strategy for Satan. He doesn't have to get us to make bad choices. What Satan does is he gets human beings to make good choices in America, but then he gets us to turn those good choices into God choices, okay? And that's a great strategy, isn't it? Because when a good thing turns into a God thing, we all know that it turns into a bad thing. Perfect example, I know it's a really old movie, but some of you probably remember this movie with Jimmy Fallon and Drew Barrymore called Fever Pitch, okay? If you haven't seen it, Jimmy Fallon's character is like a super nice guy, meets this girl, they fall in love, everything's going good until baseball season starts, okay? Jimmy Fallon is a fanatical baseball fan of the Red Sox, right? And some of you would say the Red Sox are evil, but let's be honest, they're a baseball team, they're whatever. They're not really bad. It's just when you worship them, they can begin to ruin your life. And that's exactly what happens for Fallon's character. Okay? His worship of the Red Sox proceeds to derail his life, derail his love interests, and derail everything that he wants to do in life because he worships this team. And when a good thing turns into a God thing, it becomes a bad thing. And this is exactly what Satan does in so many areas of our life, isn't it? Okay? He does this with sports, obviously, that's what we're talking about. He does this with hobbies, okay? Hobbies aren't bad. Fishing isn't bad, fathers, but when you begin to turn this good thing that God gave us, we all can agree Jesus was, it's a biblical sport, fishing. Jesus was, fishing with his friends all the time in the Bible. It's not bad. But when you turn it into a God thing, it becomes a bad thing, right? It begins to overtake your life. Kids are good, but when you begin to worship your kids, root your identity in your kids, that's not good. Kids are not emotionally stable, so you root your identity in your kids' emotional instability, what's going to happen? You're going to become emotionally unstable, right? I see this happen with marriage. People will worship their marriage or work. That's really common. Beauty. How many people worship their beauty, right? They put so much into their beauty saying, if I am beautiful, then I'm valuable. Partying. I don't think partying is a bad thing. I think it's great to have a good time with friends. But when you make partying the reason for your existence, it's like, yeah, it's Friday, awesome, it's amazing. And then, you live to party. It begins to become unsatisfying. A lot of you have been there or are there, right? I didn't get what I thought I was going to get out of it. I don't feel good because I'm worshiping this partying. I see this happen with vacations. People always living for the next vacation. I can't wait to go to this new place. And what I was talking about at the start of this conversation, politics. I think it's so funny because we live in a society that actually worships politics right now. That's what we're doing. And our world is becoming very extreme. Everywhere you look, people are demanding extremeness. If you don't affirm and agree with and support what I believe, then you're the enemy. And people begin to look through these extreme lenses, right? Say Republicans are evil. They're the devil. Anybody who's a Republican is no friend of mine. It's like, come on, they're not. Democrats are evil. Anybody who's a Democrat, is not a friend of mine. It's like, this is extreme. This is crazy. What are we doing? Bernie is evil. He's the Antichrist. Come on, guy. Trump is evil. He's terrible. Look, they're not the enemy. And on the other side of the coin, Trump will not be able to fix everything. Bernie will not be able to fix anything. So many people said, if the Cubs win the World Series, my life will be better. Is it? Is it really better permanently? I mean, it was better for a few days, okay? It was better for a little while, but I would argue that all the problems in the world did not go away. We still have problems, right? Despite a miracle happening. The people I like most in life are compromisers, okay? I love having a wide variety of different perspectives in my friend circle. I enjoy that. I enjoy engaging with people who are able to be truly tolerant. I know that I hold some views that are very specific and cut out, and I love that I have friends who disagree with me, right? I desperately want them to agree with me. I want to persuade them, but I'm going to respect, dignify, and tolerate them even though they disagree with me. I think that's really, really important. I think it's admirable, and I think it's truly contrarian to have people in your life who disagree with you as friends. And I'm not saying that you need to agree with or endorse what they have, but I do think it's important that we have people who disagree with us that are in our lives. Now, I think one of the biggest threats to godly fatherhood in the world that we live in today is this extreme culture that I'm talking about. I think this extremeness is derailing what fathers were meant to be in the world we live in. I think it's destroying the work that God wants to do in our lives. And I've got 3 points for fathers today. I'm going to review them all really quickly at the start. These are the points of the talk. Number 1, being a father is a balancing act. Number 2, being a father means recovering from mistakes. And number 3, helping our fathers means encouraging, not discouraging. Let's go to the first point. Being a father is a balancing act. Now, I think we live in an American culture that tells men, you got to go all out. Women are told to find men who are extreme, right? You find a man who is extremely focused on being an entrepreneur. I just love his passion. He's just so passionate about his business, and I just love the way this man is such a brave entrepreneur. It's so attractive. Is it really? Or you see this guy who's a courageous leader. Oh, he's just such a courageous, he's just so focused on, leading. He's just, he's so attractive, unbelievable. That's what's, or you see this guy who's totally tender. Oh, he's just so soft-hearted. You look for this one trait that's extreme, and that's what our society says is great. Here's the thing. If you marry one of those guys, you're going to be disappointed because great men, being a father is a balancing act. Okay, I've got 3 points in this talk, but my first point has 3 subpoints. Okay, so I'm going to talk about 3 things that a father needs to balance. Okay, the first thing that I think a father needs to balance is they need to have a balance of provision versus presence. They need to have a balance of provision and presence. I think God calls fathers to be providers. That's something that we're called to do. But here's the thing: when you are a provider, you cannot be present. Right? When you're a provider, you can't be present in life because you're off providing. Now, on the other hand, you're called to be present as well. But when you're present, you can't be providing. And the reality is you need to have a balance of both. If you marry a man who's only focused on providing, that'll be great. Your kid will have, the best baseball cleats, the best batting gloves, the absolute best TPX baseball bat, but your husband will never be there to watch him swing it. Right? He won't be present. And the problem is, I think sometimes what we do is we get so focused on providing, and men do this all the time. We get so focused on overtime and weekends and holidays and time and a half and this and that, we miss out on everything. And the goal as a father is to walk across the balancing beam of fatherhood, leading our family, leading our children across this balancing beam to successful adulthood on the other end, right? That's what we want. We want to lead our kids across the balance beam of life. It's a balance of both. If you're present all the time, well, that's great. You're at all the games, you're there with your kids, but your family isn't going to have what they need to survive, right? Successful fathers need to balance both of these because being a father is a balancing act. The second thing fathers need to balance is discipline versus tenderness. This is interesting to me because the pendulum always swings from one extreme to the other, right? We live in this extreme culture. The greatest generation, okay, the Great Depression kids who fought World War II, raised the baby boomers. And the greatest generation were extreme disciplinarians. They disciplined their kids a lot. So a lot of baby boomers in here, you were raised by parents who were extremely focused on discipline. And because of that, you never acted out or acted up. You did good things with your life. The problem is you're totally out of touch with your emotions. Those of you who were raised by baby boomers, you know your parents have extreme difficulty articulating and expressing their emotions, right? It's a big problem. And what the baby boomers did, they said, man, our parents disciplined us so much. Our childhood was so off balance. You know what we're going to do? We're never going to discipline our kids, right? We're just gonna be totally tender, totally encouraging of our kids all the time, right? That's gonna be awesome. You know what happened? You raised the most emotionally diagnosed, the most emotionally unstable, the most emotionally unhappy generation of all time ever in American history called the millennials. Thank you. That's us. Right? Because we need a balance of both. We need a balance of both. You gotta have discipline and you gotta have tenderness. Okay? You can't just go to one extreme and say, I'm gonna discipline all the time, or the other extreme and say, I'm gonna be tender all the time. What happens if you get to one extreme? You're not gonna have a balanced life. You're not gonna be successful, because being a father is a balancing act. It's not an act of extremity, right? It's not an extremist act, it's an act of balance. And you need both. The Bible tells us in Proverbs that if you spare the rod, you'll spoil the child. I want to take a moment to speak to millennial parents, because I think my generation still focuses on participation trophies and total tenderness. I want you to understand, if you do not discipline your kids, you will spoil your kids. I mean, the Bible is so right on so many different levels. Statistically speaking, it takes thousands of years for science to confirm what the Bible already teaches us thousands of years ago, but I really believe the Bible calls us to discipline our children. That's something we have to do. Okay? We don't only discipline, we do a balance of both. We discipline, we're tender as fathers. It's a balancing act. We need to find that balance. My third point under this first point is control versus support. Okay? I think this is something that men need to work on. I think there's a smaller percentage of men who lean towards control. I think there's a larger percentage of men that lean towards support. I probably lean towards control. There's a lot of great leaders who are able to lift up all kinds of great people around them in their life. They've got vision, they're focused, they know what they want to do, right? And here's the thing, I've gotten to meet a lot of these great people who are men who are doing great things with their life. And when I meet them, I always assume that their children are going to be awesome, right? Because they lift up people all around them all the time, right? They're really, really good at it. I assume that their kids are going to be great. But what usually happens when you have a great leader? Their kids usually end up to regress towards the mean. They end up kind of mediocre, right? That's what happens. I think so much of that is because what great leaders do is they control and force their kids into their own vision for their life, rather than allowing their kids and supporting their kids into developing their own vision in life. That's a tension that I have to work on, right? I always have to say, you know what, am I dominating my family too much, right? That's something that I have to deal with as a father. On the other end of the spectrum, and I think this is far more common, is parents who say, I just want to be supportive, right? Our kids have so many options, I want them to be able to choose whatever they want. You want unlimited, unmitigated access to the internet? Perfect. You want to determine your own bedtime? Awesome. You want to have a sleepover whenever you want? You do it. As long as you're happy, you do you. I want to be a supportive parent, right? I think our kids crave boundaries. And the reality is, when it comes to control and support, we need a balance of both, right? We need to help our kids make great choices. We need to help our kids develop a vision for their life. On the other hand, we can't control too much what that vision's going to be. It's a balance of both, because being a father is a balancing act, not an act of extremity. I think it's so critical that we understand this. Ecclesiastes 3 verse 1 tells us, for everything there is a season. There's a time for every activity under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant and a time to harvest, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to cry and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to turn away. He's telling his son, Ecclesiastes is a book written from a father to his son, and this is a father telling his son, life is a balancing act. Being a father is a balancing act. If you want to be successful, you need to live a life of balance. Jesus says fathers and men were called to a balancing act. Now here's the thing, fathers. What we do is we walk our kids across the balance beam of life, and we also point where the end of the balance beam is going to, right? We can point it over here, we can point it over there. We start off with our kids as babies, and we lead them in a direction. Okay? Not only is it important that we as fathers are balanced, I think it's also important that we think about the destination that we're leading our families to. Okay? I think for a lot of us, I want my kids to be financially successful. I want them to be productive citizens. And I want you to know, I think that's a silly goal. For me, my number one goal, more than anything else, if I believe that God is real, if I believe that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life to heaven, the only way, then the only thing I want for my kids, the only thing, the biggest thing, by far, is that I want my kids to love Jesus. Okay? If my kids are homeless drug addicts who love Jesus, or they're super successful businessmen who have lost their soul but gained the whole world, I would much rather they be homeless addicts, right? And I don't think that's an either or that it needs to be, but I want us to think about our priorities, fathers. I want us to think about what really, really matters as we lead our kids across the balance beam of life. Now here's the thing, as a father, I want to be honest with you. A lot of times on the balance beam of fatherhood, I get sidetracked. I get focused. I get focused on provision. I get focused on work or whatever, and sometimes I fall off the beam, right? Sometimes I fall off the beam, and it happens. It happens when we lose balance. We end up chasing things that don't matter, and that brings me to my second point. I want you to see this. Being a father is a balancing act. Being a father means recovering from mistakes. Recovering from mistakes. Proverbs tells us that the godly man may trip 7 times, but they will get up again. But one disaster is enough to overthrow the wicked. What is the difference between a godly man and a wicked man? The difference is very simple, isn't it? A godly man will get up again, right? A wicked man will give up. Ladies, I want you to listen close, okay? I know this might be shocking to you, but there is no such thing as a perfect man, okay? It doesn't exist. The test of a good man isn't will he mess up. They will all mess up, okay? They all will mess up. That's not the test of a good man. The test of a good man is he tenacious enough to get back up again? Does he have enough courage and fortitude to say, even though I failed, I will get up? Though a righteous man falls 7 times, still he gets up, right? Society paints this picture of extremism for our fathers, doesn't it? Right? We have, you're either a Beaver Cleaver type of dad or you're a Homer Simpson. There's no in between. And I think for dads, we're like, if I mess up one time, I'm just a total dolt. Oh, you know, that's it. That's what I fall into. And that's not it. The Bible tells us the definition of a godly man, of a good man, isn't someone who never screws up. It's somebody who gets back up again. A few nights ago, I raised my voice at our middle child. And that's significant for us because we do discipline our kids. We do not spare the rod in my household. We don't abuse them. We never discipline them out of anger. We always do it out of love. But the other night, we have a commitment in our house not to yell at our kids. Okay? Every house is different, but I see some families that they always yell at their kids, and their kids will only respond to a yell. I've had those kids in youth group. Thank you, parents. When I was a youth pastor, that was it's awesome. Okay? Really appreciate you setting that bar for me. Now, there are other kids that respond to a whisper. And that's what we want for our kids. So Kristen and I just made a commitment. We would never yell at our kids. And for the first time, I've been a father for 5 years, almost 6 years. And my middle child, for the first time in my life, she just exasperated me to the point where I said, Hermione, stop it. I couldn't believe I did it. There was a mirror in the room where I was talking to her. And I just saw my face in that mirror. And it was like, and I just thought, this is what my daughter is seeing. And in that moment, I knew I'd fallen off the beam. Right? I knew that when it came to discipline versus tenderness, I had totally fallen off the beam. And I did what any dad would do, right? I ignored it. I sat down on the beam, and I said, well, I'm not going to talk about that. And so I put my daughter to bed, and mom came home a few hours later, and I went and talked to the girls who were still up because they were so emotionally traumatized by their father. And I hear my middle child say, Daddy broke my heart. And Kristen came downstairs, and she said, John, I love you. You're a man of God, and I know the way that you treated Hermione is not a reflection of your heart. I want you to get upstairs, and I want you to fix it, because I know you can be better than this, right? She didn't come down and say, you blew it. You're terrible. What were you thinking? No. She came downstairs, and she said, I know you're better than this. And she helped me step back onto the balance beam of life, and she helped me discipline my daughter with the balance of discipline and tenderness, right? That's what happened in our life, because a righteous man might fall 7 times, but still he gets up. I'm not a bad father, even though I messed up in that moment. You're not a bad father because you have messed up, right? What defines a good father from a bad one is the godly man will get back up again. In the Bible, there are no perfect examples of a father besides our heavenly Father. David, Jacob, Judah, Noah, all failed tremendously, but what makes them godly men is they get back up again. Men, I want you to hear this before I move on to my third point. You can get back up again. You can get back up again. God has a calling on your life. You have what it takes. You can get back up again. It might have been 20 years that you spent sulking on the beam like this, sitting down thinking, I can't believe that I did that. I can't believe that I failed. I'm telling you today, stand up and lead your family. You have what it takes. You have an anointing on your life. Your kids might be long gone, but if you're not dead, then God isn't done. Get back up again. You can do it. My third point is pretty simple, okay? Helping our fathers means encouraging, not discouraging. I have 2 girls, and then I have a son who's 1. Here's a picture of my son, Eldon. He's a good little boy. And Eldon and I have just begun playing catch. We just started our first games of rolling a ball back and forth. I tried throwing things at him. And it's a lot of fun. He's a good boy. Now, everybody told me that boys would be different than my daughters, but I had no idea. The other night, Kristen and I, he's into everything. We were putting the kids to bed, and we turned our backs, I'm not kidding you, for under 10 seconds. During that time period, my 1-year-old son climbs into our bathtub, which was empty at the time, and he goes up to the drain. He pulls the drain out of the drain cover out of the drain. It's like covered in black, moss or whatever. And he just, no! You just see a little bit on the side. He thought it was delicious. Maybe it is, and nobody knows. No! My daughters they're like house cats, right? It's funny. My daughters, I can give them praise. Oh, you did such a good job. I'm so proud of you. You're so beautiful. They're like house cats. They'll come to you if they want. They'll leave if they don't want, right? They do what they want. Praise might affect them, it might not. It just depends on the day, the mood, the temperature, the outfit. Emotional disapproval to my daughters, we're working on the sass, okay? Again, we don't spare the rod in my house, but if I'm like, hey, I'm disappointed in you, they'll look at me and they'll go, humph, right? Doesn't affect them. They don't care about emotion. Now, it's funny because, like, if my daughter's reaching for something hot, what we do is we do a hand flick at the house. We just flick the hand, real soft, gently, it's nothing crazy, but I don't want her to reach for the top of the stove or whatever, right? So we flick her hand. If I flick one of my daughter's hands, it's like I cut the hand off. It's like, it's the end of the world. It's over. They're dead. It's just, I have seriously wounded them, right? My son, on the other hand, discipline for him it's just ineffective. It's like a mosquito bit him. Like, what, is that all you got? Like, he will not cry. He'll look at me with this, like, smile on his face, like, oh, it's a game. No, it's your life. I am disciplining you. Now, on the other hand, my son, if I give him emotional disapproval, it's like everyone that he loved in his life just died. It's over, right? If I give him approval, he's like, yeah, you tell me, I'll do it again. Whatever it is, I don't care what it is. You want me to get in the car with you? Great, I'll do it. You want me to eat that vegetable? Yeah, just give me the approval, right? That's it, he's so different. Now, people told us this would happen. People told us exactly this would happen. I didn't believe it until I saw it. Now, if I'm playing catch with Eldon, like I said, we're playing catch, and he misses the ball, based on his nature, if I want him to continue to play, to continue to get better, to continue to try, what should I do? Should I look at him and scream at him, say, you are so terrible and uncoordinated, I can't believe it. All the other 1.5-year-olds have progressed far beyond your level. Why are you so terrible? You're losing, you're a loser, you stink. Should I do that? No. I should encourage him. That's okay, son. I love you, keep trying. You're doing such a good job, you almost got it. Keep trying. Hey, here's a tip. Keep your eye on the ball. Good job, keep going, you're doing good, right? Romans 3:23 speaks to us about correction. It says, for everyone has sinned, we all fall short of God's glorious standard. Now, who falls short? Everyone. Ladies, God tells us in the Bible that your husbands will fail you. Children, God tells us in the Bible that your fathers on earth will fail you, okay? I feel like sometimes we have these expectations that our dads are going to be perfect, that our husbands are going to be perfect, that they're always going to be perfect, and it's like, oh, how could you? How could you betray me in this way? He will fall short. He will fall off the balance beam. I know there's some ladies in here, you're thinking, man, I really wish I could upgrade. I wish I could get an upgrade right now. Some of you are thinking about it. You're thinking, I want to upgrade because my man is defective. There's something wrong with him, okay? He's got a problem. I want to trade him in. My wife and I, we do marriage counseling every now and then. And one of the things we do in marriage counseling is we talk about our own marital issues. That's one of the things we do on this. That's what I love about First Church is we can be honest about who we are. There's no plastic, fantastic Stepford marriage or anything like that. We're honest about it, right? But we usually share stories about our fights. And you should see the faces of the women when I share about the things that I've done to Kristen. Their eyes are just like, what? Why would you do that? I zone out at home all the time. I've yelled at my wife. And believe it or not, sometimes I don't follow through with what I say I'll do, right? Sometimes I don't call on my way home. Sometimes I leave clothes on the floor, right? A lot of times, all the time, in fact, because we all fall short. Check out how God responds when we fall short. It says, yet God freely and graciously declares that we are righteous. Freely and graciously. You see, when we mess up with God, he doesn't sit there and go, oh, how many times do I have to tell you this is unbelievable? You need to pick up your shoes. I mean, seriously, a 4-year-old can remember to do this. What's wrong with you? Crumbs on the counter? Are you kidding me? This is ridiculous. I mean, can't you help out? Can't you notice something? I mean, what is wrong with you? You're a child. You disappoint me. I'm embarrassed to take you in public. That's not what God does. He says, freely and graciously declares that we are righteous. Righteousness is a step beyond forgiveness. Okay? Righteousness means everything is right between us. It's not just, man, I forgive you. It means I'm not angry at you. There's no weeks of silent treatment. There's no like pouty whatever. It's like, no. We're right. We're good. Right away. We're good. We're totally righteous. It's all good. He did this through Christ Jesus when he freed us from the penalty of our sins. This is what Jesus does for us. And I want to ask a question. Ladies, how come it's so easy for us to give this to our sons? Right? It's easy to freely and graciously forgive our sons. I mean, Eldon is so cute. We love him so much. It's easy to forgive him. I have seen grown women make the craziest excuses for their grown sons. I talked to a lady once who was like, yeah, I wish his boss would just understand that he's a night owl. You know? He just stays up late and he sleeps through his alarm. It's not his fault. It's not. Like tearfully. Right? I mean, you can freely and graciously forgive your son. Why can't you extend that same thing to the man you swore to be with for the rest of your life? Right? You see, what is the difference between a son and a husband? Usually husbands are a little bit fatter because they're older. But the truth is, we still feel crushed by failure, don't we? We still feel crushed by failure. Just like my son, when I give him emotional disapproval, what happens? You know what happens inside when I feel like I failed? Even though I'm a grown 32-year-old man? That's what I feel like. That's what your husbands feel like. That little boy heart is still there. If I yell at my son constantly when he falls, what's going to happen? Eldon, you're such an idiot. I can't believe you did that. Eldon, why can't you remember? What's wrong with you? What's going to happen? When it comes to the balance beam of life, Eldon is just going to sit down and give up, right? He's just going to sit here dejected, feeling like a failure. Because he's trying as hard as he can, but he just feels like he can't do it anymore, right? That's what's going to happen if I yell at him all the time. And I would bet that there's a lot of fathers who are just sitting just like this on the balance beam of life. Eventually, if I yell at my son enough, he'll just walk away from the balance beam, right? He'll go to work because he can win there. He'll go fishing every weekend because he can win there, right? That's a little bit easier to manage. I mean, it's just one-dimensional. If you want to encourage your husband, if you want your husband to engage at home, if you want your father to be on the balance beam of life, what if you tried to encourage him? There's something that I've struggled with at home for years. And I remember the first time that Kristen and I had this fight, man, she got angry. She yelled at me. You know, she cried, she wept, she called her friend. It was awful, right? And I was on the balance beam. I fell off, and I didn't want to get back up again. Years later, I've still had conversations. We still had fights over the same thing because I failed. And she's been so gracious. And I can tell you that with confidence, because of the way that she's treating me, I feel so much more confident to step back on the balance beam of life because my wife has chosen to encourage me. Because helping our fathers means encouraging, not discouraging. I've got two simple challenges. As we close. Wives and children, you might have a dad that fell off the beam. In fact, I know you do. You know why? Because we all fall short, right? Today, what if you responded a little bit differently than you normally would? Today, what if you tried encouragement and not discouragement? I know that he's not perfect, but what if you went to him without disrespect, without backhanded compliments? I think it's so funny to me. Even that video we showed before this, it's so hard for us to compliment our dad without throwing a joke in there at the end, right? Like, oh yeah, you're a great dresser, but you wear sandals with socks on, right? I mean, like that's what we do. We give this backhand because what, are we afraid his head's gonna get too big? Like what is the deal with this? Let him soak in the praise. I love praising my son. I love telling him what a great boy he is and seeing him delight in it. Why can't we do that for the loves of our life? Why can't we do that for our fathers? Go to your dad and say, Dad, I know you're doing the best you can with what you have. You might have a father who isn't that great. You might have a father who's messed up a lot. You might have a father who's made lots of mistakes, but what do we do to that dad? I know that your dad didn't wake up in the morning saying, I just want to be a terrible dad. It's my goal. Like, it's what I want to do today. No. He's probably doing the best he can with what he has. I don't know his full background, the situation that he was raised in, the proclivities that God allowed to be put into him when sin entered the world. I don't understand all that, but I believe that you're doing the best you can with what you have. What if you told your dad, I respect you unconditionally. I respect you unconditionally. Regardless of how you treat me, I choose to respect you. What if you said that to your husband? Hey, regardless of what happens, I want you to know I'm with you and I respect you unconditionally, right? What if you told your husband, I have eyes only for you. I want you to know I'm only seeking your attention. I want you to know today I'm not going to seek the affirmation of an emotional connection with another man. I just want your attention. What would that do for your husband? How much confidence would that give him to step onto the beam of life? What if you said, Dad, thanks for not giving up on us? Or if he did, I'm sorry for focusing only on the negative. Our relationship isn't over yet because you're still living. I want to pursue a friendship with you. I want to pursue it. What if you did that with your dad today? Now, fathers, I got a challenge for you too. Okay, I got a challenge for you too. This is what I want you to hear. This message is not an excuse for you to point the finger at your family and say it's their fault that you stepped off the beam of life. Okay? I wanted to give your family some insight. I wanted to give your family some pointers. I wanted to show your family your heart, but listen. We lead the way. God made us the lions. We roar at the world, and Papa Lion is not afraid of the kittens. Okay? Think about that. Think about what that looks like. That is so many of our lives. I want you to know God made you to roar at the world. The way that your family treats you is not an excuse for you to abdicate your responsibilities as a man. You have what it takes. You can step onto that beam. You can be what God called you to be. God wired you. He made you. He anointed you. He equipped you. And He has called you to be a father. So do it. You can do it. You have what it takes. I want to challenge you. I want to ask you to be courageous and say, I'm going to step back on. Though a righteous man may fall 7 times, still he gets up. And today, I will be a man of God. I will be a godly man in my marriage, in my life, with my children, in my workplace, in all areas. God has called me to this. I'm going to do it. I'm going to walk into it. That's all I got for fathers today. What I do want to do is I want to pray for the fathers in the room. And I would ask if you are a father to stand, regardless of whether or not your children are here with you. And families, if you're around a father, place your hand on him in an appropriate area. It's always, just got to say that. Let me pray for the fathers of our church. Lord, I thank you for the men that you have given the gift of children to. Lord, I believe that you open and close the womb. And I thank you for the gift of children. I thank you for the gift of marriage. I pray for the men of our church. I ask that they would step boldly into the anointing that you have called them to. I ask that you would give them the courage to recover from failure. I ask that you would give them the courage to pursue their wives and children. I ask that you would give them the courage to get back up again. I ask that you would fill our church with men who are godly, who are after your own heart, men of integrity, men of wisdom, men of leadership, men of balance, men of patience, men of forgiveness. God, I ask that you would begin a revival in the families of this church and this community through these men in this room today. I ask this in the blessed name of Jesus. All God's people said, amen.